Thank you so much for, offering to or volunteering to do this interview for the Climate and Diversity Committee. We're excited to, feature you in the interview series for the Women's History Month. I guess to get started, could you, introduce yourself, but then also give some background of like where you've come from and, how you've landed here scientifically?
Sure. So I'm Emily Weinert. So I have been here, my group moved to Penn State in summer 2019. So before that, I was actually down in the Department of Chemistry at Emory University, and before that, a postdoc at UC Berkeley. Then before that, a grad student at Maryland. I'm not sure how much you want, but and before that, an undergrad at Duke. And so scientifically, stuff has come about in quite roundabout ways. So my group right now, we study molecular mechanisms of bacterial signaling proteins and cyclic nucleotide signaling pathways in terms of both oxygen sensing, heme proteins, and then also cyclic nucleotides, both bacterial second messengers, cyclic di-GMP, and atypical cyclic nucleotides that are found in, seems like at least most domains of life. But yeah, I mean, my background is pretty varied. My undergraduate work was actually very biophysical chemistry, looking at energy transfer and stuff in melanins. I then went on to be an organic chemist as a grad student, working in, I guess, more bioorganic, but on the organic synthetic model systems of DNA alkylation. And then I went off and my postdoc started finally working on proteins and a family of heme proteins where most of them only bind NO, but I had one of the weird ones that binds oxygen, and that's sort of what got me interested in oxygen sensing. So yeah.
Very cool, very cool. So that kind of explains how you got to this point, but I guess what initiated your love of science, of chemistry? And you mentioned you started in more of a physical chemistry sense.
Yeah, so actually my very first time was, I was lucky enough to grow up near a national lab, actually on Long Island, near Brookhaven National Lab. And when I don't know if they still have these because it's a lot of years ago now, but when I was in high school, they had the summer science program where you could apply and just go do basically like an internship. And so I'd always been really interested in how things worked and how like the biology, native, like natural world sort of functioned. And actually, when I was a lot younger, I wanted to like be a true like studying animals in the wild kind of thing, like wolf migration patterns, all this, until I realized I'm both don't like being that cold and not really interested in being surrounded by animals that could easily eat me. So I ended up doing this summer science program, and I actually worked in a DNA sort of photobiology lab where we looked at radiation damage, doing these double-stranded breaks, which are particularly important for things like from heavy ions that are in outer space and stuff like that. So that's sort of where I got hooked on the real mechanistic, detail-oriented stuff of biological systems. And so actually, originally, I was planning to I was thinking I might go, I was trying to decide if I wanted to do sort of biochemistry or chemistry for undergrad. And where my undergrad just didn't have a biochem major at the time. And so my advisor at the National Lab was like, well, do a chem major. You can, then it'll be some of the biochem will be a little easier. I don't know if that's true or not, but it's what started me down the path. And then, so then we sort of went, it sort of was a long meandering path since then.
That entire process, I mean, I'm sure you've had various role models. In honor of Women's History Month, would you mind sharing maybe a woman who has been a role model in the past that has helped you get to where you are today?
Sure. So actually, my very first mentor, actually the PI at Brookhaven, is Bessie Sutherland, who was one of the first people, I think. She went to Georgia Tech for grad school, and I believe she was the first woman in her program to get a PhD there. So, she graduated. I forget the exact time, but it was, she was already senior, coming to the end of her career when I was in her lab. This is late 90s. So it was just incredible, talking to her, and just the fact that, she was routine, like almost always, probably just about always, the only woman in the room for all of this stuff. And the science that just her she really was just really inspiring in both that her love of science, but also just how, when she talked about sort of very understatedly. So I'm sure there was a lot more stuff that was going on, but just sort of all the things of going through to be sort of, one of the pioneers in this really in, her program and her stuff to be going through that. So I just found her really inspiring. Unfortunately, she passed away a number of years ago from cancer, so she's not still around. But I mean, she's just an incredible scientist, and a really wonderful, just also a really wonderful mentor for teaching you not just how to do science, the basics, oh, here, pipette this or whatever, but to make sure that you're really think about science and come up with projects and ideas and stuff.
So we'll follow that up with who is your favorite Nobel Prize recipient?
I don't know if I have one, to be honest, that I like totally, similar. Oh, actually, you know what? If we're going to do one for recently, you know who it would be? I mean, I think there are a lot of amazing ones, though, I think overall would be Frances Arnold. Her chemistry is so cool. I mean, and are harnessing the biological systems, but just also, if you have ever get a chance to hear her talks are just, she just is an incredible speaker to make you, granted, working on heme proteins, I'm of course a little biased because I was already like, hey, these are cool proteins, but the way that she thinks and manages to bring this all together to, almost enchants the audience with the possibilities that are out there. And so I just think that is such an amazing skill. Because of course, I've heard other Nobel laureates when I was in grad school come and speak, and I will not name names, but some of those talks were awful, right? It was just droning on, flipping slides. And so being able to motivate and inspire people, I think really is something that I find, I guess I'm using the word over again, but I just find her ability to do that so inspiring. Plus her chemistry and her science is just, I think, super cool.
Throughout your career in chemistry, what is the most unforgettable moment, from at any point? It could be conferences, it could be maybe way back when you had your first publication, or a particular piece of data, but one thing that that kind of changed you, or something you just really remember.
First is, I think, just getting to go in, and maybe not my first summer lab experience in the lab at the National Lab, but then in Betsy's lab, I was able to come back. I just went in and started going in since we lived close by, all the holidays. And then the next summer, I got one of Department of Energy used to have these fellowships at national labs. I don't know if they still have, probably not. But, I got to go back in then, and really the first summer was really kind of just, it's like you normally are as your first time as an undergrad in a lab. You're just kind of making stuff and learning how to not break anything or contaminate stuff or whatever. And the next summer, really getting to go in there and having my own project. Because they basically I got taught how to do the stuff and got set free on my own project to work on it. Yeah, with plenty of, assistance and guidance, but to just sit there and direct your own, be basically in charge at that point, I guess I was 18 or something, of your own research project for a summer, to be diving in was just, an intoxicating experience. It's probably what really hooked me on all the research and stuff. Is just it was so fun. So that's, for me, was really, I think, so impactful. And for me, it really has really guided the way that I often do stuff when people come in, even undergrads coming into the lab. You get a semester to get started and learn your stuff, kind of learn the techniques, and then find a project that you're excited about, that you just want to take over and drive, so that everybody can have at least a snippet to see, do they really love this or not?
So this one, I feel like this is a very cliche chemistry question, but if, what's your favorite element, and maybe why? Is it connected to your work, or is it something that you just think is cool?
Yeah. So, I guess I'd say, probably overall, my favorite one is definitely come around to be iron. I used to really love molybdenum for no really good reason, except for that it was in such cool cofactors, the FOMOCO cofactor. And I just thought, what a crazy element to have in biology. But I think at the end of the day, really comes down to iron, which I guess makes sense. We have hemes in our proteins. Iron doesn't get you don't get a heme without it. But then the more we've started working actually with microbes in my group, which I mean, I'll be honest, I have no formal training in microbiology at all. So we sort of bumbled our way into this along the way, is you realize that the war for metals is so intense. So if you've ever gotten to hear or read any of Liz Nolan stuff from on that kind of, in immune responses and the fight for metals, but even just the microbes like hanging out in the dirt or, in your office or whatever, they're constantly trying to get metals. And iron is such a pain because iron 3 is salts tend to be so insoluble. And so thinking about like how much of microbial life and us too as eukaryotes, but centers around the need for iron and then controlling the reactivity of the iron so that you don't accidentally kill yourself with Fenton chemistry. It's kind of amazing how many processes have popped up in biology that require iron and they're required to tame iron. And so I think, at the end of the day, that's probably been come around. Although for a long time, even when working on hemes, I really thought I just really like the esoteric metals. They seem kind of more fun, Sure.
And thank you so much for your time today.
Sure. Yeah, no, thanks for interviewing. Hopefully I wasn't being too much of a goofball that you'll find enough to at least get 2 minutes or something together.
No, I think it was great. It was great.